Hey everyone, I wanted to give you a little something extra today. So I've been conducting wealth management workshops and retirement workshops for quite some time. And I thought it'd be a good idea just to run through my slide presentation. And this is just like you would be going to a live event, a live workshop. So sit back and enjoy in the comfort of your own home. You don't have to jump in a car. You don't have to get dressed and fight the traffic. And I just think it's a good idea to share this with you guys. So just want to jump in here. So my name is Erick Arnett with TakePoint Wealth Management. I'm an industry veteran. I've been doing this for 30 years. I've contributed to Kiplinger, Fortune, Forbes. You can find me on 99.9, Fox News. Anyways, been doing this for a long time. And so I'm the founder of TakePoint Wealth Management. I've written the book, What is Your Financial Speed? And most importantly, I think that I'm most proud of is I am a disabled combat veteran. I served in the U.S. Army for 8 years. And so I believe in patriotism, I believe in the flag, and I treat my clients with the same respect and diligence that I carried through my military career. I want to protect your portfolios, I want to protect your retirement, just like I did our country. So that's what I'm most proud of. But let's jump in here. So just a little housekeeping, if you go through this presentation today and something jumps out at you, you're going to be offered an opportunity to click on a link and schedule a one-on-one consultation with us. I tell people this in our live events. This is kind of like a practical and a lab situation. So this is the practical part, the study part. But if you don't attend a live lab, and put your own personal retirement plan to the test, or at least come in and let us look at it. We can do a Zoom appointment in the comfort of your own home. But we're comprehensive retirement planners. We're specialists in retirement planning. And so if something today jumps out at you and you want to work on it, then you can get a hold of us for an appointment. And we'd love to spend that time with you to customize what you learned today. Really, if you go through this and you just kind of take some notes and you don't act, it's really not doing anything. It's really not being that impactful. You need to act and customize a plan for you, and that's what we'll do here for you at TakePoint Wealth Management. So obviously, when retirees, pre-retirees, people are polled, the number one concern that comes back is not having enough income, right, or running out of money in retirement. That's our biggest fear. We also are concerned about the risk in the markets and the ever evolving, changing economy. I think we've all got to be real and realistic with ourselves. This economy and this market is nothing like our grandpa's market. This is very different, what we're experiencing right now. We'll get into that a little bit later. And I'll share another presentation just strictly on the markets at a later time that really has us concerned about the concentration of technology and AI and how it's really kind of running the market. And just as an example, like in the S&P 500, there's 500 different stocks, but only about 10 are getting all the money flow and attention. The rest of the market's being completely ignored. And we're seeing a concentration in the market like we've never seen before, which is a little bit concerning. And then, of course, like the potentially damaging impact of taxes. So, one of the main things that we want to address when we're building out your own customized plan for you is we're going to look at reducing taxes. We're going to look at reducing fees and expenses. We want to look at reducing risk, okay, getting you from point A to point B with the least amount of risk and achieving your goals. We'll talk a little bit about that later. But also, just making more money. So I talk about this a lot on the radio, and I've shared it in some videos before. I kind of look at investment management and the investment industry as analogy like going to a physician. So there's a lot of general physicians out there, family doctors, general practitioners, and you're going to go there for some sniffles, some sneezes. Hey, I'm not feeling good. But if there's something really acutely wrong, or there's something more concerning, they're gonna send you to a specialist. So like if you have a heart condition, you have a skin condition or a foot problem, they're gonna send you to a specialist, a podiatrist. They're gonna send you to a cardiologist or a dermatologist. Well, I look at the investment industry no different. There's a lot of general practitioners out there, a lot of general advisors, brokers, insurance agents, everybody calling themselves a financial advisor. But you need a specialist when it comes to retirement. When you're in the retirement red zone, you're 5, 10 years out, or even in retirement now, you need a specialist that specializes and has a process to get you to and through retirement successfully. And that's all we do at TakePoint on Retirement is we simply specialize in retirement planning and being able to reach all your goals safely. So let's jump into it. Let's talk about income first. So, most of the time, there's very few of us out there that have a pension these days. So normally when I do this presentation live, I'll ask folks in the audience, how many people here still have a pension? Raise your hand. And really about a third of the room will raise their hand. So the days of the pensions are gone. If you're a government employee, a state employee, county employee, you probably have a pension. There's still some companies that have pensions around, but very far and few between. That's kind of gone away. Our government got in bed with corporations years ago in the early 80s, and they passed the ERISA law and the ERISA Act of 1982 or something like that, and basically invented the 401k. And what, basically corporations were lobbying the politicians to say, hey, we don't want to take care of these people anymore. We don't want to provide a pension. We don't want to provide the retirement. We want them to save their own money, right? So it got corporations off the hook, because they're so bottom line driven and it, didn't want to take care of the employee long term anymore. So very few of us have a pension. A lot of us are going to have to rely on Social Security. The three-legged stool is not looking so strong somewhere. Social Security has its problems. We know that in 2035, the Social Security fund actually runs out. Good news, bad news is that, currently workers pay into Social Security, so there is still money being collected for benefits. But more than likely, there's going to be a reduction in benefits at some point because of Social Security's, in a crisis. And so, if you're in your 60s already, you probably may not see a reduction in benefits. Younger folks like myself, 55, younger folks in their 40s and 30s, they're probably going to have to work longer or they're going to get a much reduced benefit. The studies are showing that, Social Security is going to have to be reduced by 80% somehow because all we have and all we will have is current workers paying into the system to provide for all of the retired folks. So Social Security was never meant to be the end all, the be all. It wasn't meant to provide for your retirement. It was meant to be a supplement to the pension and to your own personal savings. What's scary is that 65% of America will run out of money. That's and are relying on Social Security. So that's kind of scary. So if you haven't saved up a personal savings and you're relying on Social Security, it's gonna, with inflation and all the things that are heading our way, we'll talk a little bit about that earlier, healthcare, all these things. Social Security isn't going to quite cut it. So we've got to rely on our personal savings, right? And we can't make mistakes because if that legged stool is starting to crumble, Social Security, the pension's gone, then all we're relying on is our personal savings. A couple basic Social Security basics, when you can file. Most of us out there listening, you're going to be able to file at age 67. That's your full retirement age, where you get 100% of your benefit, 100% of what you've worked for your whole life. And so if any time you take Social Security prior to 67, it's going to be a reduced benefit, okay? So at age 62, you're going to get about 70% of your benefit. There's also some concerns there. A lot of times I hear people come in the office and they'll be like, oh, I'm going to go ahead and turn on my Social Security. I turned 62 with really no planning or thought put into it. And so there are some concerns there because there's a lot of different strategies. There's a lot of different things to think about, like income, your IRMA, Medicare premiums, taxes on your Social Security, penalties on Social Security. There's certain income levels that you can't go over, or they're going to take back $1 for every $2 you earn. So if you're still getting 1099 wages or W-2 wages, you got to be very careful. this is a critical thing to talk about and even reach out to us. So we can even just do a Social Security report for you. We're completely certified in Social Security, so we can do that Social Security maximization report. We can look at you as a couple or even if you're single and really find the best filing strategy for you and what makes sense. Maybe it makes sense to defer Social Security. Maybe it makes sense to turn it on. Maybe it makes sense to draw down your IRA for a while. If you're married and you have a younger spouse, maybe it makes sense to continue to full retirement age so she can collect the spousal benefit, which was half of your Social Security. So don't just jump into taking Social Security right away. I hear this all the time, like, oh, I'm not going to live forever. Oh, the government's going to crumble, so I'm just going to go ahead and turn it on. But then they end up penalizing themselves and giving most of it back in taxes. So be careful there. Social Security, even if you call the Social Security office, they're probably not going to have an answer for you. So give us a call at TakePoint Wealth or jump into an appointment with us, and we'll be happy to work through that with you. There is some COLA, some cost of living, but even if you're getting a 3 or 4% increase, it's really nothing that great compared to what we've seen in inflation, right? So milk, gas, housing, insurance, property taxes, those things have gone up 20, 30, 40%, sometimes 50%. Heck, I just got my new property tax bill and my insurance bill. They went up 100%, folks. They doubled. Not 50%, 100%. So thank goodness I'm still working and I'm earning, but if you're in that red zone, this is critical stuff. And so that's why that personal savings is so important to protect and to maximize. Don't rely on these COLA adjustments because they're really not that exciting. And these are some of the common questions that we get. And, so I put these together. And, listen, folks, I don't claim to be the smartest man in the world. I've just been doing this for 30 years. So, I've seen a lot of mistakes. And so I could put a million things in this presentation, and I really put some time and thought into it and broke it down into 4 key kind of concerns or points that I think might be important for you guys to understand. But a lot of times we get these questions, Social Security, like, hey, I'm going to go ahead and turn on my Social Security, and even though I don't need it, and I'm going to invest the checks. So that strategy never works. It sounds great, but it never works because you end up spending that money, or you end up penalizing yourself, you end up giving it back in taxes, or you make some bad investments. And most people don't have the discipline to properly invest that. And you have no idea what your rate of return is going to be. So does that really make sense to take risk with that? I don't think so. I think that's just kind of a fantasy and kind of pie in the sky. Um, you know, there is, once again, I talked about the earnings test. Be careful if you're receiving W-2 wages or 1099 wages and you're 62, you haven't reached full retirement age. So yes, at 67 or your full retirement age, you're no longer going to be penalized, okay? And they're not going to take back that $1 for every $2 rule. So be very careful. Anything prior to your full retirement age, you're going to potentially pay those penalties. So just be careful. And if you continue to defer your Social Security past 67, you can defer it all the way to age 70, and it's going to grow by 8% every year. So that's pretty good. I tell people, like, if you don't need the Social Security, don't take it. Keep deferring it. It's going to grow. Where else can you get an 8% growth on an annuity? And if you have a younger spouse, think about your spouse, or maybe your spouse's income was less than yours. You would be setting her up for a higher benefit in the event of your passing, which is going to add to hundreds of thousands of dollars over her lifetime. So we'll talk a little bit about that later, but be very careful with these kind of Social Security decisions and questions. How does claiming early affect the spouse, particularly when it comes to survivor benefits? And that's just it. If you claim early, your spouse is going to get much lower benefits. It's just plain and simple. So be careful and be thoughtful of your spouse. And typically, talking to the men out there, if we usually go sooner. It just is what it is. And so let's set our spouses up and our wives for a good income in the future. Be careful with that. So when we do that comprehensive TakePoint on retirement freedom plan, we'll talk about it a little bit later. We're going to look at all of these aspects. We're going to put a bubble around you and optimize everything for you. It's very complicated. It's not just like going online and filling out a retirement calculator right quick and saying, oh yeah, I'm going to be fine. No, There's hundreds of data points that you've got to look at, and that's why you've got to talk to a specialist. And this is just kind of, a scenario. I'll let you look at this real quick, but this is a real client, a real family, a real couple, and why is planning so important? So as you can see, just what I was talking about earlier, the longer that this couple defers, and look at the difference in the amount of money that they collect over their lifetime. So don't be so quick to jump in here at the early 62 benefits age. You're going to get a much lower benefit for sure. And I've heard like, oh, I'm not going to live that long, or you don't know how long you're going to live. So let's maximize your Social Security. So what about that 4% withdrawal rule? A lot of you have heard that, right? You know, I'm not so sure about this rule. That's why I wrote the book, What is Your Financial Speed? I think everybody out there needs a customized decision, a customized answer, a customized plan. Like maybe 5%. I just was working with a couple today earlier, and 5% is going to work for them based on our extensive planning and forecasting. We didn't just guess at that. We did a lot of work and utilized a lot of software and a lot of planning and expertise to figure that was going to be fine for them. But even a lot of experts and actuaries say that the withdrawal rate's closer to like 3.8%. That's the amount of money that you could take from your savings, okay, every year after taxes, and hopefully not run out of money in your lifetime. This is kind of that 4% rule that you probably heard about. But I'm not real crazy about it. Like I said, I think some people it might be 2%, some people it might be 6%, some might be 3%. That's why we've got to do that extensive, comprehensive plan that I've basically honed this process over 30 years. Okay, so once again, get with somebody that really specializes in this, not just a general practitioner that's going to take your money, throw it in the market, and hope for the best. Okay. So really, like, $1 million, let's just say you saved $1 million, and 3% of $1 million, $30,000 a year, it's not real exciting. $30,000 a year doesn't go that far anymore. Yeah, if you put that on top of two people making Social Security, a little bit of a pension, maybe not that bad. But if it's just, you're going to be relying on that savings or that investment or that IRA or 401k, you got to be very careful. You cannot make mistakes. We're going to talk about this in a couple slides ahead. But not real exciting, that 30% annual income. It's $30,000 today is not what it was years ago, right? So yeah, so if you're, you know, 5 years out of retirement, I would call what you're called in that retirement danger zone or the retirement red zone. This is where you can't make any mistakes. And we're going to go ahead and start talking about market and market risk now. So the next big thing that I try to help people with is understanding risk in their investments and in their plan, and de-risking that portfolio the best we can, but still achieving the goals and the outcomes that we need. So as you get closer to retirement, less and less of your money should be at risk, because you just don't have much time to recover. The market is going to drop every 3 to 5 years. We have a correction. When you had 35 to 40 years to bounce back from losses, and you're still working and you're putting money in, and that's okay. Your dollar cost averaging in even is better. But now that you're in that danger zone or that red zone, you're not going to be able to recover from those big losses. So as you get closer to retirement, things really need to change. You've got to look at things completely differently than you ever have before. Promise me, please hear this. Like, when I talk about this, people just kind of glaze over. You've got to flip your brains. You're going into a period of time where you've got to think about this completely differently than you ever have. And that's why you're here, and I'm glad you're here, and you're educating yourself. But you've got to look at things very differently. You've got to flip your brain. You're going into what we call the distribution phase of life, the preservation phase of life. you're no longer working, you're no longer accumulating assets. I talk to people all the time. I can think of this one client, and he's like, man, this is really difficult. I'm used to saving, and now I'm having to draw. He's like, this is very scary. And even though this guy, his plan's going to work out, he's got plenty of money. I've been working with him for 10 years now. He's going to be fine, but it's still that feeling like, oh my gosh, like I'm not working anymore. This is critical. Like now I'm pulling money out from my savings. So it's a very different feeling. And that's why you got to look at things very different. That's why we call the last 10 years before you plan to retire the retirement danger zone. Because if you're within 10 years of retiring, you're still investing the same way you were when you were younger, you might be at risk of a drop in the market significantly affecting those retirement options. So there's simply far more at stake that close to your retirement. And it's important that each of you here today be using some very different strategies. So we're not going to be able to get to it all today in a presentation. I'd have you on here for days, but I'm hoping that this scratches something that you're like, hey, you know what? I need to reach out for that professional. I need to reach out for that specialist, and I need to really dive in and look at what my plan looks like. So yeah, we're gonna talk a little bit about the depth of drops, the recovery time, the new math for retirees, something called sequence of returns, and the timing of the markets. So we know, like, hey, the stock market just keeps hitting new highs. You can see, it's getting pretty high and lofty up here, and we just keep hitting new highs. And typically when we see a chart like this, and we've reached new highs, the next move is going to be some type of correction or peel back, right? And we've already seen some really increased volatility here in 2026, and so regardless, this doesn't matter if you're in that zone. If you're, like you said, we're younger, this is fine. You invest on the dips. But now that you're in that danger zone or that red zone, you've got to really be concerned about this market volatility. And we know that every 3 to 5 years, historically, we're going to have some type of correction. And can you afford that correction? Can you afford that? Are you going to be able to recover from that? Plus, if you're pulling money out of your portfolio at the same time. So be very, very cautious here. This market keeps just hitting, new highs. And, we've been in more than a 10-year bull run in this market, beginning after the stock market crash of 2020, as the coronavirus rocked the world, and days later it was officially deemed a pandemic by the World Health Organization, and the Dow plunged, and the markets were in turmoil. So that was a scary time. I'm sure a lot of you remember. And we recorded 2 or more record-setting point drops in March 12th and March 16th of 2020. So the good news is those historic drops were followed by an amazing rebound in the markets after bottoming out in March 23 of 2020. The stock market actually ended 2020 better than it started, with new record highs. The Dow Jones Industrial Average and S&P and the Nasdaq were up 43% in a rally from the bottom. So, but like I said, that kind of volatility is just something that you guys can't really afford and we're not going to just always be in a bull market. There's going to be some bear markets here, so we got to prepare for that bear market, especially if we're in that danger zone. So this is just since 1948, there's been 13 bear market losses. I'm talking about 20% plus losses. Some of you kind of remember some of these, and like I said, there's one about every 5 years. And so the average bear market lasted 10 months and took the market down 35%. So imagine if you had $1 million and you lost $350,000. That's a lot of money. You worked hard for that. You worked a lot of years for that. Can you really take that kind of risk? Very few investors have that risk tolerance to emotionally accept a series of losses of 20% or more. So the timing of these downturns can have a negative effect on reaching your financial goals, such as college savings or starting your retirement. really setting up a plan. If you look at these charts, you can see some of us probably remember these times. I mean, 2009, 2007, 2008, it was down 50%. So, bear markets are real. The last 4 years have been great, but if you're going into retirement, we've got to think about things a little bit differently. And here's a perfect example, like getting back to even. If you were down 20%, it's going to take you 7 years. And this is typically what happens is people get hit in the markets, they panic, they cancel, they sell out, or they go to some kind of conservative investment like bonds or money market or CDs or something, and they're only going to get 3%. And it's going to take you 7 to 10 years to get your money back. What if you had a 30% decline? Okay, you've got to stay invested, or you've got to add money to be able to come out of these market declines. So, do you really have money, a bunch of money sitting on the sidelines that you can add to your portfolio during downturns? No, you don't. So that's why we've got to protect that. We've got to buffer that. Since we specialize in retirement planning, we only work with retirees and pre-retirees. We offer strategies that you're just not going to see at some of the other investment shops, or I'm not going to name any names, but you know what I'm talking about, the big ones of the world. They're just going to be those traditional model portfolios based on a questionnaire that you fill out. No real sophisticated strategies to provide income, to buffer the downside of the markets, to smooth out volatility, to take out risk. So, it's all about crafting that perfect design portfolio, utilizing tools that you just don't have available to you in your tool chest right now. So the new math for retirees, I kind of touched upon this. Let's just imagine a $100,000 portfolio, you go down 25%, you're going to be left with 75 grand. It takes 33%, not 25%, to get back to where you were. But also imagine if you were pulling out money at the same time, right? Say you had to pull out 5,000. Now it's going to take you 43% to get back. That's pretty hard to do, almost impossible to get 43% returns. So once again, just kind of illustrating here, my concerns for folks right now is just I'm seeing way too much risk in folks' retirement plans. So this is one that I think is important to understand, rate of return versus yield. So, stop asking and stop looking at average rate of returns. When you look at an average rate of return on a mutual fund, an ETF, or any type of investment, you're looking in the past over a 10-year average. Okay, and that's an average. And so you have no idea where you're jumping on the roller coaster. If you're jumping in at the high, the low, where you're at. So this is just an illustration to show you where averages mean nothing. You need to now be thinking about money coming into your pocket, cash flow, real yield, not hypothetical or values or capital appreciation, but real money coming into your pocket, cash flow. So most of us, when we pick an investment, and unfortunately a lot of you out there are left to kind of manage your 401k, which, by the way, if you're watching this and you're still working and you have a 401k plan, I got great news. You can actually hire an advisor to manage that for you. New laws, new rules. You can actually add, and we have ways that you can add a manager to your 401k to help you manage this much better, more effectively going into that danger zone. So it's hard, like, for you to do this on your own. Like, most of you out there aren't financial advisors or financial planners. You're architects, you're doctors, you're mechanics, you're nurses, whatever. No one told you how to manage portfolios, and you're making your decisions based on average rate of returns in the arrears. So perfect example, if you had 500,000, you made 50% one year, you're up 750. That's awesome, right? Well, the next year you're down 50. This could be monthly returns. If you look at your portfolio currently and you're seeing big swings in your values day to day, week to week, or month to month, then you've got too much volatility, too much risk in your portfolio. Then imagine, okay, you get a 30% upside. This is great, right? Well, guess what? Look, on a $500,000 investment, you've averaged 10% over the last 3 years, and you're underwater. You're down to 487. Okay, so stop looking at past average rates of return to design your portfolios. That's not going to work for you. It's a mirage. It's a lie. Okay. So this, I love this slide. Some of you probably have heard about this before, but this is sequence of returns, Rick. So if you look at the final IRA account balances, you'll see Steve has over $874,000 still in his IRA. And this is after 10 years of taking $30,000 of income, while his brother Bill has only about $96,000. Well, how could that be? Folks, the differences in the results is something called sequence of returns. And in retirement, it can be devastating, completely devastating. I've seen this in real life and it's not pretty. So if you look at the difference in the order or the sequence returns between the two brothers, you see that Steve's first decade in retirement was a great one in the market. Bill's, on the other hand, was marked by a sequence of big downward returns. And while they both started off the exact same amount of money, after 10 years, Bill was left with about 11% of his brother's account balance. So look at that. Basically wiped out at $96,000. So each of you here today watching this will have different circumstances, but this is simple. This simple little hypothetical example highlights the importance of the two things. First, making sure you're not overexposed to the market risk too late in life. And second, making sure, as we said before, that you have a guaranteed plan for lifetime income, cash flow. So you're never in the position Bill is in here, realizing you might have a lot of life left, but not so much account balance, okay? So, and these are real returns. These are the real returns in the S&P 500. We didn't just make these up. If you go back and look, from 2010 to 2019, those are the real S&P rates of return in the stock market. So it really depends on, once again, like I said, where are you retiring? You could be retiring right now and the markets are hitting all new highs. Okay, so what's the next move over the next 3 to 5 years? We don't know. I don't have a crystal ball, but you certainly can't afford to make mistakes and have double-digit negative returns on top of pulling your money out, going forward. So this is what I'm saying. We've got to flip our brains, got to look at things totally differently. And I know some of you might be thinking, yeah, Eric, but if I take my money out of the market, won't I be missing out on gains if the market goes up? And others of you here might be worried that, you're behind, you feel you need to take more risk to catch up. I get that. We even get asked all the time, is there any way to link our money to some of the gains the market is making to basically mirror some of that rise without actually putting our money at risk? And that's a fair question. So what if there was a way to grow your money if the market continues to go up, but not lose your money if the market goes down? Did you know that such a thing actually exists? There are opportunities that are available, but just like anything else, not every person, not every opportunity is right for every person. So we've got to look at your specific needs and your specific situation to customize something. And that's why it's so important that you have a custom tailored plan, not just a regular run-of-the-mill portfolio that unfortunately 95% of America has. Take for example mutual funds. Many of you here today or tonight watching this are most likely invested in mutual funds, which are essentially a collection of stocks. So let me show you, an illustration of that. So just make the math super simple. Let's say we start with 100,000 and we put it into a mutual fund. And the next year, the fund we're investing in goes down 40%. Now you're up 60%. I showed you this, right, in the last slide earlier. Average rate of returns. People will always tell you, Wall Street will always tell you that the average rate of return for those 2 years is up 5% because they simply average two changes. But that doesn't look like their money is up, right? So quit talking about averages. So anyways, really important sequence of returns. Let's jump to the next slide. So we know that April 15th is tax day, right? So let's talk about other ways that we can actually save taxes. So really important to be tax efficient. So that's, all I'm going to say is like, hey, You've got to keep those assets protected, but also you got to be very mindful of taxes. Who likes to pay taxes? Nobody likes to pay taxes. And so let's see how we can try to, transition some things and lower some the damaging impact of taxes. Um, Taxes are obviously a critical, important thing to think about as you approach retirement, because at the end of the day, they can have a huge impact on how much money you actually have to live on once you retire. So now you have to be listening to many advisors out there. They've been telling you something about what you should do with your money when it comes to taxes. Several of you here today have heard this advice. See if it sounds familiar. You should go tax deferred, a tax deferred account. While everybody else is telling you that, I'm telling you that if you have too much of your money tucked in tax deferred, it might very well cost you when you can retire. So, there's tax-free buckets, taxable buckets, tax deferred buckets. And so let's look at some of the ways that we can potentially combat the tax man. So we can see that our nation is $38 trillion in debt. So you tell me where taxes are headed in the future. Right now, taxes are historically low under the current administration, but with $38 trillion in debt and spending continue to increase, how are they going to take care of this deficit? Are they going to cut expenses? I doubt it. So how else are they going to do it? They've got to raise revenue. There's only two ways: you either cut expenses or you raise revenue, right? So I think we're probably in historically low tax rates right now. So there's going to be some things that we can do, some strategies that we can take to take advantage of that. So these are the three buckets. Most people come in to see us, they have most of their money all locked up in that tax deferred bucket, which can create a real problem. We want to try to even these buckets out if we can, and you need to be thinking about this, especially if you're 5 years out, 10 years out, if you're getting to this early. These three tax buckets, it's really important to try to get as much money in that tax-free bucket as we can. But what we typically see is when people come in, they're all heavily loaded. I mean, 95% of everybody we talk to, all their money is in tax deferred. And I'm going to show you what happened there. So maybe, maybe the government is licking their chops and they're not so concerned about the deficits when, over $9 trillion right now are sitting in employer-sponsored defined contribution plans or retirement plans. Over 6 trillion, and this is an older slide, it's probably closer to 7, 8, $9 trillion now is held in 401k plans, especially with the recent market increases. So, unfortunately, when a rising tide floats all ships, everything looks good. You don't really have to be that selective. You don't have to be an expert. You can throw a dart at a wall and any mutual fund's going up. All the ETFs are going up. A rising tide will float all ships. But the big concern I have, the thing that I think is so screwy is that, something I talked about earlier is you're left to do this alone. Like you're supposed to manage your own retirement, and you haven't been, you're not. I mean, I'll look at myself. I've been doing this for 30 years. I'm licensed. I've got certifications. So I work in the markets every day, all day. This is like second nature to me almost. But I'm not a dentist. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a mechanic. Heck, I don't even know where the spark plugs are. I'm not a plumber. Like you guys out there listening, you're really great at what you do. But unfortunately, you've made a lot of mistakes leading up to retirement, and it's not your fault. It's just that you've been left to do it alone. So don't continue to do it alone. Like I said earlier, you can actually get an advisor. TakePoint Wealth does it all the time. We help folks manage their 401ks. And it's really exciting to get to them in that danger zone, that 5, 10 years out, to help to properly manage their 401ks and their assets. And so we can offer more solutions than just target date return funds or mutual funds. A lot of your 401k plans are very limited as to what they can offer. We can offer a lot of safe options, a lot of buffer strategies, proprietary funds that you just can't get in a 401k plan. So reach out to me if you got questions about that. This is pretty exciting. In fact, now we've actually have a system to where the majority of 401k plans out there we can co-manage with you. So one of the most underutilized tools, and probably some of you and most of you heard about this, and my favorite tool and one of my favorite strategies is converting to a Roth IRA. So this is one way that we can combat taxes. Now, you know, I'm not going to be able to necessarily alleviate tax burdens in the first year, second year, third, but I'm trying to get people to look 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20, 30 years out, and then look at the tax savings over that long term. And typically what we see is when we run these plans and we show the forecasting in Roth conversion strategies, we're saving hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we're providing tons of money on the back end, increasing your estate and your retirement plan with these strategies. But this is a long-term strategy. It's not immediate gratification. But Roth conversions can provide a great hedge against future tax rate conversion. So imagine if the government 5 years from now raises the tax tables, and all of a sudden, you know, instead of you being a 12% tax bracket, you're in a 20%. If you're in the 20% currently, you're in a 40%. Like imagine that going into retirement with RMDs and all the taxes that you're paying, and it's going to tax your Social Security, it's going to raise your Medicare premiums. So imagine having a tax-free bucket that you can draw money out of and there's zero tax on it. That's the beauty of the Roth. I'm going to tell a little story because years ago, a guy came to me and he had a very sizable IRA. It was about 1.5 million. And we talked about Roth conversion. And he retired early. And he's like, we looked at it and we looked at mapping it out over several years. That he was like, no. He's like, rip the whole Band-Aid off now. I want to pay the taxes now. This is probably a period of time where I'm at the lowest tax, bracket or liability that I'll ever be. Let's do it now. And I was like kind of shocked. And he paid all his taxes on 1.5 million in the first year. Well, I see this guy at church all the time, 10 years later, and we talk, and he just has a big smile on his face, and he almost laughs when we talk about this kind of stuff because he's so happy now. He's like, so you get it. He's like, how you doing? Are you still getting people to convert to Roth conversions? They're like, it's kind of like pulling teeth sometimes. I can't get them to see the big picture long term. Everybody always wants that immediate satisfaction. Unfortunately, that's kind of how we're programmed. But he just says, you know what? I don't care if the government raises taxes 60%. Imagine if you live in California. I've heard stories that 60% of your income goes to taxes. 60% of zero is zero, folks. So love, love, love the Roth conversion strategy, and we can implement one for you. It's all about planning. It might be 5 years, 10-year conversion, whatever. We're going to look at, I have people in their 70s want to convert sometimes. So the conversion is going to allow you to pay taxes at today's rates, okay? There's no income tax due on the future earnings or withdrawals. And it doesn't count towards your Social Security benefits. This is huge. It doesn't count towards your Social Security benefits on that bottom line of your tax returns. And this is one thing that people never think of. It's an amazing legacy planning tool. You can actually leave your Roth to your legacy and they're going to inherit it tax-free. Okay, so imagine if you left them this tax-deferred IRA or 401k just keeps growing. You got to take taxes out, pay tax, and now all of a sudden your kids inherit it and they're still working, and they end up paying 30-40% taxes on your hard-earned money. Imagine that. I mean, a lot of people kind of get angry at me when I tell them, like, do you know that the government's a partner in your IRA? Like they're like a 20, 30, sometimes 40% partner in your IRA. Like what, they look at me like you're crazy. I'm like, no, you have $1 million IRA, but guess what? Only about 600,000 or 700,000 of it belongs to you. That's crazy to think like that, right? But this is the power of the Roth conversions and converting to a Roth, and they allow you to pay taxes at today's rates. And I think taxes are probably going to be a major concern for most of our retirees going forward. So this is what I was talking about earlier about this tax trap. A lot of you have been set up. you were told years and years ago to defer your income and get that tax break from the tax man, and you had to create a 401k, no more pension, and most people just are looking for that immediate satisfaction. It's painful, right? When you sit down with the CPA every year, he's like, "Hey, man, you owe this much in taxes." And you're like, "Well, what do I do? What do I do?" Well, he's like, "Okay, why don't you make this IRA contribution, or up your 401k contribution, and we'll defer that, kick that can down the road." All you're doing is creating a bigger problem for yourself. So, how does saving tax on 155,000 income lead to paying tax over $1 million? Let's look at this next slide. It's a little hard to see, but hopefully you can zoom in. Basically what this is showing is somebody's put $5,000 away in an IRA, from 35 to 65. They've got a decent return on it, about 7%. So they put a total of 155 into their IRA, and it grew to $528,000. That's great, right? So now we go over this next chart, and this person's, retiring, he's got 528,000, and boom, there's their RMDs kicking at 73. So here's their RMDs coming out, and you can see those numbers are going up every year. These factors are going up, these numbers are going up. And when you go into retirement, you're probably going to invest a little more conservative, potentially. But here, quite simply, you pass away at 85, you've had to withdraw 486,000 and pay taxes on it. But guess what? Your IRA still kept growing, right? And now you get a $758,000 IRA. You add those two numbers, over $1 million is now taxable to Uncle Sam. So maybe this is why he's licking his chops, and that big lie, that big mirage that was created. We have tons of people that come in and see us that we're trying to help alleviate this big tax bubble that they have. And you got to be proactive. You got to work on it. Like every day, you got to work on this. Like you got to get going on it. You just can't keep kicking that can down the road, because guess what? It's just going to be a bigger problem, and you're going to end up losing more of your estate to taxes. So I just sat down with some clients the other day, inherited IRA. They have a pension, they have Social Security, and then they inherit this money from his sister, a sizable IRA. Well, he's on the clock now. He doesn't have a choice. He's got 10 years to pull that money out. Now all that money goes on top of his Social Security, on top of his pension, kick them in a higher tax bracket, and that's a real problem for them. So we've got to look at ways now that we can start alleviating this big bubble or this big problem that you could be creating for yourself. So another thing that I think is really important to talk about, and we get a lot of questions, is legacy planning. So, you can have the best retirement plan in the world. You could have hit a home run. All your goals and needs are being met, and you're happy, and that's great. But if you don't have the proper legacy plan in place, it could be all for nothing. So let's have a little fun here. A little guessing game. You'll recognize some of these faces, and I ask people, when we're doing the live events, I always say, "Hey, what do these people have in common?" Well, what do they have in common? They're all wealthy, right? All stars, movie stars, actresses, singers. But they also are all dead, right? Yep. Well, what happened to them? Why would I bring this slide up? Well, they all died intestate. Imagine this. Imagine Michael Jackson, Prince, Aretha Franklin, the money and the empires and the estates that these people had, and they didn't even have a will in place, a valid will, no estate plan. So they died intestate. Their entire estates got locked up into probate and courts and legal battles and attorneys just sucking them dry. So the reason that I put this part into the presentation, because I think it's really, really important. The whole gist of this is I want to help you avoid probate. You need to avoid probate. If you're out there listening and watching this today, and any of you have been through probate before, you know it's not a pretty process. It's timely, it's expensive, it's just flat out aggravating. Probate opens you up to the public. Your state is settled out in the open. People can come forward and challenge it, creditors, liability, long lost cousins, brothers, and sisters come forward and wreak havoc and make claims on the estate. And so you've got to have a good, solid estate plan. So one of the things that we do at TakePoint Wealth is we provide that estate planning for you right in house. And you can be in your underwear in Hawaii. I don't care. We're going to take care of your estate planning for you, and at a fraction of the cost of what you would do have to pay with an attorney. But really interesting that these people pass with no estate plan at all. So what percent of American adults don't actually have a will or other estate plan in place? Well, over 55% of America has no will. And I think it's actually probably a little bit higher than that, because almost everybody that comes in our office, we see hundreds of people. I think we did 100, over probably 100 wills and trusts just last year alone, but almost everybody that comes in needs help, and they're not prepared. The average time frame to have a will probated. So think about this: um, 6 months to 2 years. During COVID, there was files stacked up on the desks of judges, 4 years to settle estates. Um, in the state of Florida alone, an attorney can charge up to 6% to settle the estate. So imagine 6% on estate value is pretty high, but costly, timely, and so we want to avoid that. I think of a time where my dad, his uncle told him, like, hey, when I pass away, you're going to get a lot of money, and I'm leaving a nice chunk of money to you or whatever. Well, his uncle passed away, and he waited and he waited and he waited and he waited. And guess what? I think it was like 3 years later, he got an inheritance, and it was a fraction of what he would have gotten if the estate would have been put in a trust. So it got ate alive with fees and improperly invested, time value of money. Some people came forward and challenged it, so he got less. There was no proper estate in place. So very, very upsetting and impactful. So one thing is, oh, the other thing too about a will is a will is only going to basically be a guideline for a judge. You're not going to get all your answers today, but if you want to just know, do I need a will versus a trust, just link up with us, click on the buttons, get an appointment, send us an email, call us, schedule a call. We'll talk about your situation, your specific situation, and easily be able to answer, do you need a will versus a trust, or do you, in most cases, need both? And what we're really trying to do is help you avoid probate, okay? But the great thing about a trust is it's going to help you avoid probate, but also a trust provides for you while you're alive. What if you're incapacitated? A will is only in effect after you're dead. A will is no good to you while you're alive. So what if you're still here? You need a trust in place to help manage your affairs and provide for you during your lifetime. What's in the value of your estate? You got to look at all these types of things. Your home, your insurance proceeds are actually part of your estate. So look at the value of your estate, look at the complexity of it, all the different assets, are they titled properly? These are things that, you don't have to have IRAs or 401ks in a trust per se, but other investments, rental properties, primary homes. Your homes are all going to be probated if they're not in a trust. That's why I say everyone needs a living trust. Like literally, I firmly believe everyone needs a living trust. And if you don't believe me, reach out to us. We'll get you the book, Everyone Needs a Living Trust. That wasn't written by me. It was actually written by an attorney. And he'll tell you straight up, like if you own a piece of property, it should be in a trust so you avoid probate. And so you're going to have questions about that. Ladybird deeds, do I deed it to my kids? Please don't make the mistake of just deeding your property to somebody else while you're alive. Big, big problem there. Tax situations, liability situations, potentially losing your property entirely, and you're not going to avoid probate. Be careful when we sit down with folks and we're trying to help them figure out who's their trustee is going to be or their personal representative is going to be. This is really important to think about. Um, the person that you name as your trustee or your personal representative, this is all the things that they got to deal with. This is all the things that they need to be experts on. So think about it, final tax returns, estate taxes, all of these things that the executive is going to be responsible for. So if you have concerns about that, give us a call, because we're going to be able to, or set up an appointment with us. We're going to be able to coach you on that and show you how to alleviate a lot of that risk and concern. We can help you set up corporate trustees. We can help you figure out who the best are going to be in those positions. But most importantly, making sure things are titled properly, avoiding all those pitfalls. I've been in trust and designing trust for a long, long time. And so this is where I think some of the biggest mistakes are made with families and retirees and in planning, is the lack of planning in this discipline here can just wreak havoc and cause a lot of problems. Over taxation, just a plethora of problems. So give us a call. You need a trust. We'll provide you a will package, a trust. You're going to get durable power of attorney, living wills, health surrogate, trust and wills, all in a nice leather binder, notarized, witnessed, and at a fraction of the cost you pay for an attorney. In fact, if you call us today after watching this and you get an appointment with us, we're gonna give you a 50% discount on that. Okay, so you need to give us a call to find out the cost. It's a very reasonable, low cost program. So the big question is: your estate plan leaving a legacy or a mess? Think about that for a minute. So when you visit, let's talk about the plan that you're going to receive. Whether you're a remote client and we're just going to do this all virtual, or you're local and you can come in and see us at the office. By the way, we have clients all over the country, all over the world. We can work virtually with you, and we're quite frankly, we're happy to do that. But this is all completely complimentary. We're going to go through and design and customize your own personal plan. It's going to cover, it's going to have a written income plan. You're going to know your risk tolerance versus your current portfolio. We're going to pull out the risk and all the concerns, and we're going to compare it to your current portfolio so you can kind of see where your risks lie. We're going to look at providing that tax reduction analysis for you, and then also that legacy plan. So all of this planning done for you, completely complimentary. Guess what, folks? It's not going to cost you a dime other than your time and sharing your information with us. And then we're going to go to work for you. And we're going to design a plan for you, a completely customized plan, optimized to get you to and through retirement, okay, at no cost to you. And you're thinking, oh, what's the catch? Well, I'll get to that. There's not a catch, but we're simply looking to optimize things for you and deliver that plan free of charge. You have no obligation to work with us. But if you see something that makes sense and you like us and you want to work with us, great, we'll talk about that. So the three most important things we should consider is your story. We're going to listen to you. We're going to build a customized plan, and then we're going to show you, can we help or not? And maybe we can, maybe we can't, but there's no pressure. And then it's going to boil down to, do you want our help, right? Do you want to implement what we have brought forward in optimization? So in summary, we want to help ensure you have enough income. We want to help protect you from unnecessary risk and market risks. We want to help reduce the effect of taxes, and of course, avoid probate. Okay, so all of those things are our key matrix. So do you really have a plan in place? Then if you don't, or maybe you do, let's take a look at your current plan. Maybe it's fine. But I'm going to test it. I'm going to throw 1,000 scenarios at it. Good markets, bad markets, combinations thereof, 1,000 scenarios. I want to see the probability of success and where the risks really lie in your portfolio in that long-term forecasting. So do you even have a plan? This is one of my favorite kind of slides. Kind of funny because I'm a little bit OCD, and the reason why I really love what I do is I love when folks come to us and they have no plan. It kind of looks like this, like a junk drawer. They got stuff all over the place. They got IRAs here, 401ks there. They inherited an IRA over here. Oh, I opened up a brokerage account over there. I don't have a will. I got an old trust in place. I don't know what that is. Like just a hodgepodge of things that are highly unorganized. Well, guess what? As you're in that right retirement red zone, that danger zone, it's time to get organized. And so I love taking that mess. I was just recently blessed to work with a new client. She came to us and she had stuff all over the place. I mean, just crazy things like inherited stuff from her mom. She had things, and her mom had stuff all over the place, and so literally had accounts in 9 different places. Had no idea what the fees were, no idea how it was invested. No idea what her asset allocation was. What kind of tax ramifications. Like just a big mess, and to be able to take that and massage it and work with it and build a nice, clear, concise plan that she can now have confidence and clarity on. That's gonna, and we've shown her through forecasting and testing and Monte Carlo simulations and throwing stress tests at it and scenarios that look, it's gonna hold up. You're gonna be fine. And so that's where we really get passionate about what we do. And I just kind of think this is a funny slide. But this is kind of really what we're looking at. This is actually an analysis from a real TakePoint on retirement freedom plan. Look, folks, this is a process that I've honed over 30 years, specialized in just these disciplines, and people love it when they go through the process. I just had a couple here today. They were junk drawer couple, and they just were so pleased. Go on my Google, you can see their reviews. So happy that we were able to bring all this together in a nice, clear, concise plan that's going to meet all their needs. And we're taking care of everything for them. They can go enjoy retirement now. But we're going to look at Social Security and all the planning options, your tax analysis. Do we do an IRA spend down? Some of our clients we're doing IRA spend downs to. What buckets does it make sense to be taking money from first? We're going to do that free analysis on your portfolio, the risk reward, the Monte Carlo simulation, the fees, and pull out that real data that we need to dive into to understand just how your portfolio is designed and how it's going to hold up and react in certain situations. And then of course the most important thing is that detailed income plan, the income timing and the efficient income strategies, all working together to build that really good, concise plan to get you to and through retirement. So this is actually a real couple. You can see Joe and Ann, they came to us at 63. They had Social Security of $2,000 and $1,500. They had about $250,000 in savings. They had about $800,000 in an IRA. And their goals were, and that's what we're going to talk to you about. Most of you don't even know what your goals are. So let's get those goals. What does retirement look like to you? What are some of the things that you want to do in retirement? What kind of income do we need? What kind of budget do we have to have? How does all that look? And so these folks, after planning, we decided that they wanted to retire in 3 years. They were going to need $75,000 a year in retirement. They're also still trying to decide, when do we claim Social Security? And then also they were concerned about risk and not running out of money, that sequence of returns risk, right? And so these are kind of the goals and the assumptions that we first start off with. And so the first analysis is just not making any changes. When you come to us, we're going to look at what you're currently doing. We're not going to make any changes, and we're going to show you what this would look like, your plan would look like as you go through time and how it would hold up. So we put it into a really clear, concise, kind of easy plan for you. Financial planning, a lot of people out there make it so difficult. They give you a stack of papers like this, the financial plan with all these charts and numbers, and nobody even knows what it is. And, even the financial planner doesn't even know what the heck he's selling. So we break it down and make it really easy. Really financial planning comes down to 2 or 3 pages. In fact, this one is the most important one, and I've written a book about just this one page. What is your financial speed? Like this is the most important part of your plan and what we're going to pull out for you. And I tell people all the time, like, if you do nothing with us, that's okay. If nothing sinks in, that's okay. But please let this sink in. Take this one page and put it on your refrigerator. Like, and just put a magnet, stick it on the refrigerator, and don't forget it, because this is the most important part of portfolio design and retirement planning. It really is. And what this shows you is that when we ran the simulation and the scenario and the stress test on their current plan, they only had about a 51% chance of success. Okay, and you can see here, these two numbers up here, really important. Their risk was 12.15. That's standard deviation of their portfolio. Standard deviation is the measure of risk. We call it that wobble factor. So the average rate of return, these are 10-year numbers, historical 10-year rates of return, was 5.19 after fees and expenses. And so if you look at this bell curve, about 66% of all returns came under this bell curve. And so when you add 12 to 5.19, you get 17. If you take it away, you get the negative 6.96. So these are the range of returns that you could expect. And this is why we need to improve this number. So watch this. Let me show you a few things. Watch what happens here. So pay attention to these top numbers. So we were able, let's go back to the first slide, if we can. We'll go back, okay. Well, it's not gonna go back for me, but on the previous slide, we had a standard deviation of 12. Well, now we have a standard deviation of 5.47. We cut that risk in half, right? But if you notice something, we increased the rate of return. We're making more money in retirement for the client. So remember I said my goal is to put more money in your pocket than you're currently set up to get, and also to lower your risk so you can get to that goal in point A and point B a lot less risky than you currently are. Well, this is the illustration. So just making a few changes to the portfolio, we show them that through this risk reward analysis, now they had an 89% chance of success in this Monte Carlo simulation. So 89% is pretty good. Like, we're not going to be able to get everybody to 100%. Some people, you know, we will be able to get to 100%. Some people might be at 50, 60%. But our goal is to keep tweaking things, keep working with things, keep trying to get this thing as optimized as the best we can. You know, most people jump out and just build a portfolio and buy investments based on, what did I talk about earlier? Past historical returns, or just guessing and speculating on stock returns and all this kind of stuff. This is real data, tried and true, that doesn't lie. And this is forecasting, looking forward, right? So we want to know, like, how is this going to hold up in different situations going forward while you're in retirement? And so what's going to be interesting here is that the next slide you have to pay attention to. So I'm going to ask you a question real quick. If you could get an 8% return or a 7% return over time through retirement, what would you pick? What would bring you the most success? Most of us would say, oh, well, that's dumb, Eric. I want 8% instead of 7%. Well, watch this. 100% success in this plan design. And if you pay attention to the numbers up top, look where the risk went down more, almost another %, but so did the rate of return. But this is what I'm trying to talk about that people don't truly understand. It's not rates of return. It's the risk and the volatility that can be a silent killer to your portfolio. Remember those previous slides I showed you where, you know, if you had more volatility in the portfolio, that sequence of returns, if you had dips in the market, but you're also pulling money out, you're digging a bigger hole. So this is the same scenario. Over time, if you have less volatility, you're digging less holes, it's easier to maintain and to grow your portfolio and to maintain that success and that income level that you're going to need. So kind of a little lesson here. My favorite stuff to talk about, really, these 3 slides and the science behind it. You know, lowering your risk, and you don't necessarily need bigger returns. This portfolio has assets in it that are putting cash flow, guaranteed paychecks into the client's pocket, real cash. Remember, I talked about yield, not rates of return or average rates of return and dips and dives in the portfolio, where you're kind of, in a sense, getting that erosion through volatility. So this is really, really important. 100% success. You know, 89% wasn't bad, but I often kind of think about it like this analogy. Like if you're on an airplane and you're getting ready, hey, the pilot comes on and says, hey, folks, we're getting ready to head out to California and enjoy, sit back, buckle your seatbelts. We're going to get you a cocktail, and we've got an 89% chance of getting there. Whoa, 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 wait a second. 89? I'm not so sure that would make me feel so good. I want a 100% chance of success of getting there. So what does all this mean to you? A lot of information. We went through a lot today. I was just hoping to kind of, like honestly, like there's a ton of things hitting you in financial planning and in retirement planning. There's a tons of things you got to think about, and that's not your level of expertise. But what I want you to know is just by reaching out to us and spending a little time with us, we're going to get you on the right track. We're going to show you this. You'll walk away with an actual clear, concise retirement plan with no obligation. We just hope to meet you. We hope to talk to you, and we hope to get you on track. And we really love what we do, and we're passionate about what we do. And there's almost nobody. This is what's crazy and drives me crazy and keeps me up at night. There's almost nobody who we come in contact with that we don't make a big improvement in their retirement. And it's so impactful. But if you just kind of sit back and you're untrusting, and or you just I don't want to do that. You kick the can down the road, or it's too much time, or I don't trust. And who's this guy, Eric, on the slide presentation? I don't know who he is. I get all that in this day and age, but you don't have to do anything with us. We're not high pressured salesmen. I want you to walk away with the knowledge and education that you deserve, and I want you to work with a specialist that specializes and hyper focused on this retirement planning success. So what is the retirement recon process? This is a process, TakePoint Wealth's retirement recon process, just so you know. If you give us a call or get on our email, or you request an appointment on the website, however we bring you in to the funnel and get you an appointment, this is what to expect. We're just going to have a discovery meeting. The first meeting is just going to be a chit chat, a phone call. I just want to get to know you. No real intense deep dives. I just want to talk to you and get to know you. And we're just going to start to talk about and review your current income plan. What is your current investment plan? Do you have a tax plan? Are you working with a CPA? What's your health care plan look like? Can we save you some money there? And then most importantly, your estate plan. Do you even have an estate plan? So most of you today, if you call in and get an appointment with us, you're going to end up getting a completely complimentary estate plan, but we'll talk about that. There's some ways that you qualify for that. The next step after that is going to be really that portfolio review and that mutual commitment meeting. This is where we're going to get together on a second meeting, and we're going to dive in. I'm going to share some things with you. You're going to share some things with me. We're going to bring up some slide presentations. You can do all your due diligence and ask all your questions about us. But we're going to do that deep risk analysis, the cost analysis, the income analysis, that Social Security analysis, your annuity analysis if you have current annuities. So that's where we're gonna really dive in and start building your plan. And then, you're gonna start to engage, whether or not you want to engage with us, and you're gonna choose to address these issues or to optimize these things or not. And that next meeting, it's really a 3-step process. We're gonna deliver that clear, concise plan. We're gonna review, and then we're gonna talk about implementing. How do we implement this income plan? How do we implement the new investment plan? And then we get into advanced planning, taxes, healthcare, legacy planning. By the way, we'll take care of your taxes here, your healthcare here, your estate planning here, your retirement planning, investment, all your insurance needs. We're a one-stop shop. So we want to be your financial quarterback going forward. So folks, a lot of information today. Thank you for listening. I know that this is a lot to take in. And like I said, I don't have time to talk about everything. I'm just really wanted to show you, I think, 3 or 4 of the key concerns and risks that I see that you guys are facing in retirement. So I'm Erick Arnett with TakePoint Wealth, 30-year specialist. Reach out, get a hold of us, give us a call. I want to work with you as soon as possible and get you to and through retirement successfully with confidence and clarity. Thanks for listening.